Boxing truth here. Bob Arum and HBO are at it once again. As this is not nothing new, they've been in odds plenty of times before. But the relationship recently has been rocky between Bob Arum and HBO, especially ever since Peter Nelson, who is now the head of the boxing division for HBO, took over sometime late last year or early this year. And it hasn't been smooth sailing. There's been threats, there's been discussions between Arum and Showtime ever since the beginning of the year, as Arum has flirted with the idea of bringing some of his clients over to a rival network to Showtime. Now it's very possible that Bob Arum may take his promotional talents and clients to Showtime, a rival network of HBO. What would be a nightmare scenario for HBO is they would lose the type of talents that Arum's considering taking over to the rival network in Showtime, like Vasyl Lomachenko, Terrence Crawford, and Timothy Bradley. Guys that HBO have invested in, they've showcased a number of times, and they practically promoted as well. A lot of exposure for all three of those guys, in terms of fights that they've been featured on HBO. And to lose all three of them will be a devastating blow for HBO, as Top Rank and Bob Arum have been the main content provider for HBO for a number of years. They pretty much had the upper hand in terms of dates in recent times, ever since Heyman left the network and Golden Boy is no longer working with Heyman. So Top Rank, because they have more names and they have a stronger stable compared to Golden Boy, they've been pretty much the main content provider for a number of HBO dates. Now, it remains to be seen if this scenario will go down, but Arum is already going to have a meeting set with Showtime officials to see if he can find some dates for fighters like some of his clients, like Lomachenko, Terrence Crawford, and Timothy Bradley. Now, obviously, HBO is going through some budgets issues, where they can't provide the funds or the license fees that Arum's gonna want to showcase some of these fighters. Arum's claiming they simply don't have the money, even though I was under the impression that HBO was committed to Lomachenko's next fight and Terrence Crawford, considering they distributed him on pay-per-view. But Arum is saying that HBO doesn't have the money and that he can't just simply wait and wait for a network to come up with funds. He's going to do what's necessary. He's in the best interest of his company. And he's going to go to a network that has the money or the slots or opponents at a rival network for fights that can be made. I will believe it when I see it. This could be another ploy for Arum to gain leverage on HBO, get HBO shook and scared that they might lose a lot of some good names and good clients good fighters that they've invested in and have had, and they've showcased a number of times on their network, only to lose them to a rival network and possibly have these guys fight Heyman fighters, where HBO will lose out on all these fights. They've already turned down the Pacquiao fight because of the issue with the date. And Arum's irate with HBO, feels that HBO had an obligation to distribute this fight between Manny Pacquiao and Jesse Vargas. He feels that they can't pick and choose what fights they distribute, that when they passed on this fight, they're in breach of contract with Pacquiao's contract with HBO. And he feels the contract is terminated. But HBO is saying that it has nothing to do with the opponent. It has to do with the date. They're not feeling the date of November 5th because everything surrounding that date all the festivities that's going to go on around that week, and they feel the buy rate between Pacquiao and Vargas will be greatly affected because of the presidential election, the college football, the World Series, all that shit. So, while it may seem that HBO still wants to be in the Pacquiao business because they're not disputing the opponent, is the date. Had Pacquiao fought somebody else, who knows? I don't know. We'll never know if HBO would have opted to distribute the pay-per-view had Pacquiao fought somebody else, not named Jesse Vargas. We'll never know that for sure. But that's the date Pacquiao can go because of his Senate duties. And now HBO passed on the fight because of their prior commitment toward Kovalev. So it remains unclear if HBO is truly out of the Pacquiao business. But Bob Arum is already making moves to possibly move on from HBO. What would be a major blow and possibly put Peter Nelson on the hot seat. Because he hasn't had a very good run so far ever since he's been hired as a new guy for the HBO boxing division. It's been HBO's possibly one of their weakest years in recent memory. Fortunately for them, they have a very strong card coming up on September 10th. In my opinion, it's the best card that's been made in all of boxing on all of the networks, at least in America. But that would be a major blow if HBO were to lose Bradley, Crawford, and Lomachenko, as Arum is looking to match some of these guys with the Heyman clients, like Crawford and Bradley against some of the guys Heyman has in his stable, the welterweights he has. And if it's possible for those fights to be made, I'm all for it. I don't mind if somehow, some way, Arum and Heyman can make some fights together. It doesn't matter what network is on. Now, people claim I'm some HBO troll or something, or some freaking an employee of HBO. Like, I don't take sides. All I care about is, good fights, promoters working together to make fights happen, limit the cherry picking as much as possible, limit the showcases, put in world-class or pound-pound level fighters against decent competition. It doesn't have to be a big fight every time. But I'm sick and tired of watching a lot of Heyman guys fight no-hopers. And on the flip of that coin, HBO has had their fair share of showcases and mismatches. And now Bob Arum, he's tried to make some good fights, but because of the budget with HBO, he's been unable to get some of these guys to take fights. I mean, you remember Nicholas Walters? Does anybody remember that guy? He turned down a career-high payday to fight Lomachenko. He hasn't fought since. He's been on the shelf. So he must be wondering whether that was a great business decision to make, to turn down a career-high payday, not make any money, and not get any date or any fight scheduled ever since. But this could all be Arum just being Arum, making threats, trying to gain leverage. As HBO, if they lose Top Rank, they lose pretty much their main content provider. Golden Boy doesn't have the stable right now. They got a superstar in Canelo. They got a couple of champions, but most of their guys are up-and-comers, like a Joseph Diaz that still needs some seasoning before they take it to that next level. And the other promoters, they don't really have a long list of a long stable, or they got a few good fighters. Main events pretty much only has Kovalev. K2, They have Golovkin, Klitschko. Klitschko's on the at the end of his career. He has one fight left with HBO, I believe. So it's gonna be interesting to see if HBO and Arum are gonna be able to work the situation out, since Arum feels betrayed that they passed on the Pacquiao fight. Since Pacquiao's been very loyal to HBO, even when he left HBO for one fight to fight Shane Mosley on Showtime. He could have committed to a contract with Showtime then, but he didn't. He came right back to HBO. Well, it looks like Arum's going to try to move on, or at least try, or see if he can get HBO shook enough to where they provide more dates or more money to some of his clients, Arum's clients. And as for the pay-per-view for Pacquiao Vargas, Arum is claiming that it's going to be distributed by themselves. Top Rank will distribute it. He's in negotiations for major names to commentate on it. He's looking to put ads on CBS, NBC, ABC to promote it. Create a segment, promos on its own, almost 24/7 like. And he's gonna save that 7.5%, 7.5% fee for a distributor. So it's gonna be an in-house fight. He's gonna be able to. He doesn't have to pay a 7.5% distribution fee for the distributor, since Top Rank's gonna distribute on their own. And we'll see what happens with some of his clients, like a Timothy Bradley, Lomachenko, and Terrence Crawford. It will have an effect on the boxing business for sure if that comes to fruition. Arum coming over to Showtime. Some fights won't be able to be made. It's a delicate situation. If it could provide some fights between Heyman and Arum guys, I'm all for it. But if it's gonna block some matches, potentially it could. But when it comes into the welterweight division, a lot of the opponents are with Heyman and Showtime, so it's not going to affect really Bradley or Crawford. But Lomachenko, who could he fight if he was to go over to Showtime? It remains to be seen, but interesting situation going on between Arum and HBO. Perhaps it's just another ploy by him to gain leverage, or possibly he's fed up with them and may opt to just go with Showtime and do business with them for the first time in 6 years. This is Boxing Truth. I'm out.